Tom and Dea stepped into the living room, the air already tense. The soft glow of the TV lit the space where Jeffrey sat reclined in his power chair, eyes fixed on the movie but not really watching it. Josh and Linda were curled up on the sofa, half paying attention, half sensing something serious was about to happen. Dea cleared her throat gently. "Josh, Linda, can you give your dad, your brother, and me a minute, please?" They exchanged a quick look. Josh muted the TV and Linda slid off the couch quietly. Neither argued, they could feel the weight in Dea's voice. As they walked out, Linda glanced back at Jeffrey, who hadn't moved, his hands resting stiffly on the armrests. The room fell into a heavy silence once they were gone. Tom rubbed the back of his neck before stepping forward. "Jeffrey, can you pause that for a second?" Jeffrey didn't respond right away. The movie kept playing, voices and music filling the quiet tension. Finally, with a small sigh, he clicked the remote. The screen went still. "What?" Jeffrey muttered, not looking at them. Dea moved closer, her voice softer now. "We need to talk, just us." Jeffrey shifted slightly in his chair, discomfort flickering across his face. "About what now?" he said, a little sharper than he meant to. Tom pulled a chair closer so he was at eye level. "About you, about how things have been." Jeffrey let out a quiet, frustrated breath, his fingers tightening just a bit. "I'm fine." Dea shook her head gently. "You don't have to say that if it's not true." That hit something. Jeffrey looked away, jaw tightening. The room felt smaller, heavier. "I said I'm fine," he repeated, but this time it came out quieter, less certain. Tom didn't push hard, just leaned forward slightly. "You don't have to handle everything by yourself, Jeff." For a long moment, Jeffrey didn't answer. The silence stretched until his shoulders dropped just a little. "I'm just tired," he admitted, barely above a whisper. Dea reached out, resting her hand lightly over his. "Then let us help you rest." Jeffrey didn't pull away this time. Jeffrey stared ahead for a long moment, his voice low but steady. "I'm tired of my two timelines, the only ones I know," he said. "People try to understand but they don't. Sorry, but I'm done." The words hung heavy in the room, not angry, just exhausted. Tom didn't interrupt, he let that sit, then nodded slowly. "We get that," he said gently. "We really do." Dea stayed close, her presence quiet but supportive. Tom continued, a little more hopeful now. "So, we found something, a place, it's called Camp Toby." Jeffrey's eyes flickered slightly, the first real reaction. "Camp Toby," he repeated, then his expression shifted. "In the other life I remember, that place shut down." Tom gave a small, understanding smile. "Here, it just opened." That caught Jeffrey off guard. Tom leaned forward just a bit. "It's different here, Jeff, and this, it might help, give you a break from everything you've been carrying." Dea added softly, "No pressure, just a chance to breathe somewhere new." Jeffrey looked down at his hands, thinking. You could almost see the conflict in him, wanting to shut everything out but also wanting something to change. After a long pause, he nodded slightly. "Thanks," he said quietly, "I'll try it out." Tom didn't overreact, just gave a firm, reassuring nod. "That's all we're asking." For the first time in a while, the weight in the room eased just a little. Tom hesitated before adding, "The guy running it, Sam, he has SMA." Jeffrey's eyes snapped open wide, alert now. "If Sam goes to the group home, tell Grandma Pat," he said quickly. "Don't let Uncle Ben be around Sam, not in any way." Tom frowned, caught off guard. "Why?" Jeffrey's jaw tightened. He looked away for a second, choosing his words carefully. "Like the other night when I told you things that happened, if Ben and Sam are around each other, it could get ugly." He paused, then shook his head slightly. "I'll leave it at that." The room went quiet again, heavier this time. Then Jeffrey looked back at him, more serious than before. "Dad, make sure Ben is taking his meds. I don't care if you think I should stay out of it. I'm looking out for him." Tom studied him for a moment, not brushing it off this time. He could hear the concern underneath, not just fear. "All right," Tom said finally, giving a slow nod. "I'll check on him." Dea glanced between them, sensing the shift. This wasn't just Jeffrey spiraling, this was him trying in his own way to protect people. Jeffrey leaned back into his chair again, but he didn't look as shut down as before. For once, he wasn't pushing everyone away. He was trying to keep things from falling apart. Dea looked at him, confused and a little concerned. "How? What do you mean, Jeffrey?" Jeffrey rubbed his face, frustrated with himself. I don't know, I do, but I don't know his family either, he said, his words uneven, like he couldn't fully explain what he felt. Tom stepped in, trying to make sense of it. Sam's family, how does that connect? Jeffrey shook his head again, clearly overwhelmed. I don't know, Dad, he stopped, his voice fatting. The weight of everything seemed to hit him all at once. There was a long pause. Then, quieter now, more vulnerable, he said, Dad, can you help me into bed? The shift was immediate. Tom stood without hesitation. Yeah, of course. Dea stepped back to give them space, her expression softening as she watched. This wasn't about having all the answers right now, Jeffrey just needed support. Tom moved carefully, helping Jeffrey out of his power chair and into bed, making sure he was comfortable, adjusting the pillows the way he liked. You good? Tom asked gently. Jeffrey nodded slightly, already looking drained. Yeah. Tom pulled the blanket up a bit. We'll figure the rest out later, you don't have to carry it all tonight. Jeffrey didn't respond with words this time, just closed his eyes, letting himself rest. And for now, that was enough. On drop-off day, the car rolled slowly toward the entrance. Jeffrey looked out the window and froze for a second. Near the front, he spotted Sam talking with 3 men and another person sitting in a wheelchair beside them. They looked like staff or maybe other campers arriving early. Tom glanced up into the mirror, catching Jeffrey's expression. Jeffrey, you good, right? Jeffrey blinked, pulling himself back. Yeah, he said, though his voice gave him away just a little. First day nervous. Tom gave a small, understanding nod. Yeah, it be like that, new place, new people. The car came to a gentle stop. Jeffrey took a breath, gripping the armrests of his chair for a moment before letting go. His eyes drifted back to Sam and the group outside, still unsure, still cautious. But he didn't shut down. Tom turned slightly in his seat. You don't have to figure everything out today, just take it one step at a time. Jeffrey nodded, one step at a time. Tom got out, moving around to help him. As Jeffrey was lowered from the car into his power chair, he glanced up again at the camp entrance. This was it. Different timeline, different chance. And even with the nerves sitting heavy in his chest, he rolled forward. One of the men broke away from the group and walked over with an easy, welcoming smile. Hey there, he said, I'm Liam, who am I checking in today? Tom stepped forward, steady but a little protective. Hey, I'm Tom Smith, I'm checking in my son, Jeffrey Smith. He handed over the bag. His meds are in here, anything else he needs is in the suitcase. Liam nodded, taking it in without making it a big deal. Got it, thanks for letting me know. He glanced over at Jeffrey, lowering his tone slightly in a respectful way. Hey, Jeffrey, first day? Jeffrey gave a small nod. Yeah. Nervous, Liam asked, not pushing, just meeting him where he was. A little, Jeffrey admitted. Liam smiled, totally normal, we'll take it slow, all right, you're not getting thrown into anything today. Tom looked between them, easing just a bit. He might need a little time to warm up. That's fine, Liam said, we've got plenty of that here. There was a brief pause, then Tom rested a hand lightly on Jeffrey's shoulder. You got this. Jeffrey didn't say much, just gave a small nod again, but this time it felt a little more certain. Liam stepped slightly to the side, gesturing toward the entrance. Whenever you're ready, I'll show you around. Jeffrey took a breath, then moved his chair forward. Tom lingered for a second like he wasn't quite ready to let go yet, then he placed a hand gently on Jeffrey's shoulder. I'll see you in 2 weeks, he said, voice steady but warm. Love you. Jeffrey looked up at him. For a moment, all the nerves and overthinking faded. Love you too, he said quietly. Tom gave his shoulder a small squeeze, then stepped back. He didn't drag it out, just a nod. Like he trusted Jeffrey to handle this. Liam waited nearby, giving them space. Jeffrey watched as Tom walked back to the car. There was that brief moment, the almost second-guessing, but it passed. The car pulled away. Silence settled in again, but it felt different this time. Not empty, just new. Liam turned back to him with an easy smile. All right, Jeffrey, let's get you settled in. Jeffrey glanced once more toward where the car had been, then faced forward. Yeah, he said softly, okay. Liam gave a small nod and started rolling alongside him. All right, let's go see your buddy Dan. He'll be helping you these 2 weeks. I'll show you your bunk now. Jeffrey repeated it under his breath, still adjusting to everything. Buddy. Liam chuckled lightly. Yeah, your camp counselor, the guy who'll be checking in with you, helping you get settled, all that. Oh, Jeffrey said, looking ahead again. Okay. They moved through the entrance, the noise of the camp picking up around them, other arrivals, wheels on pavement, distant voices calling out names. Liam kept his tone steady and simple. First day's just about getting your space, meeting people, and figuring out where everything is. No pressure. Jeffrey nodded once, gripping his armrest a little less tightly than before. As they passed another building, Liam pointed ahead. That's the bunk area up there. I'll get you set up, then Dan will come meet you after. Jeffrey exhaled slowly. All right. It wasn't confidence yet, but it was movement forward. Liam lifted his walkie-talkie as they continued down the path. Alan, tell Dan his camper is in bunk B3. A crackle came through a moment later. Got it, Alan's voice replied. He's helping me with Sam right now, give him 2 minutes tops. Liam glanced at Jeffrey and gave a reassuring nod. Sounds like he'll be here in a sec. Jeffrey looked around the campgrounds, taking in the movement and voices, still adjusting to everything. Sam, he repeated quietly, remembering what he'd seen earlier. Liam kept his tone calm. Yeah, Dan's just handling some stuff, nothing for you to worry about. They stopped near the bunk area. The building was simple, open, with numbered sections and a few campers already settling in. B3 is right here, Liam said, pointing. This'll be your space. Jeffrey nodded slowly, eyes scanning the area. Okay. Liam stepped back slightly, giving him room. Dan will be right over, he'll walk you through the rest. For the first time since arriving, Jeffrey was no longer just arriving somewhere unknown. He was starting to be placed somewhere he could actually settle in. Jeffrey gave a small nod, still taking in the bunk area. Thank you, Liam. Liam smiled a little, relaxed. Of course. Then, like he knew what was coming next, Liam added, and before you ask, we'll call Dan when it's time for your meds, so don't worry about keeping track of everything on your own. Jeffrey glanced up, a bit surprised he'd thought of it already. Oh, okay. Liam gave a reassuring nod. We've got it handled, your job right now is just to settle in. There was a short pause as camp noise drifted in around them, footsteps, distant voices, the steady rhythm of a place already in motion. Jeffrey exhaled slowly. All right. Liam stepped back toward the walkway. I'll let Dan know you're here, he'll be with you in a couple minutes. Jeffrey watched him go for a second, then looked toward bunk B3. It was quiet here for now. New place, new routine. And for the first time that day, things weren't moving too fast to catch up with. Dan arrived a moment later, a little out of breath, quickly stepping into the space with an apologetic look. Sorry, Dan said, glancing between them. Sam had an episode acting up and Alan just got me pulled over to help. Liam nodded once, calm but focused. I figured, Jeffrey just got here. Dan shifted his attention toward Jeffrey, immediately softening his tone. Hey, Jeffrey, welcome, let's get you settled first. Liam added, we'll get him cleaned up, then lunch after. Dan nodded, yeah, that's the plan, no rush on anything else. Liam lifted a small bag slightly, and I already got his meds from his dad, so that's handled. Dan relaxed a bit at that. Good, that takes one thing off the list. Jeffrey sat quietly through it all, listening. The structure, the calm planning, it helped ground things even if everything still felt new. Dan stepped a little closer, speaking gently. All right, Jeffrey, first thing is just getting you comfortable in your bunk, then we'll go step by step from there. Sound okay? Jeffrey paused, then gave a small nod. Yeah, okay. Dan smiled faintly. Good, we'll take it easy today. And for the first time since arriving, nobody was rushing him to catch up. Dan's expression turned more serious, high risk. Liam nodded, keeping his voice steady. Yeah, he had a bad seizure 2 years ago, just got out of a coma about 2 months ago, that's why we coordinate meds through staff. Dan didn't hesitate. Got it, we'll stay on top of him, no delays. Liam handed off the responsibility with a firm nod. We've already got his meds logged and scheduled, we'll make sure he's checked regularly. Dan looked toward Jeffrey, his tone softening again. Hey, no worries, you're safe here. We're just going to be extra careful with your care plan, that's all. Jeffrey stayed quiet for a second, absorbing it. Hearing it said out loud made it feel more real but not threatening here, just structured. Okay, Jeffrey said finally. Dan gave a small, reassuring smile. Good, let's get you settled into B3, then we'll walk through everything step by step, no surprises. Liam stepped aside, gesturing toward the bunk area. You're in good hands. And this time the words didn't feel like pressure, just procedure. Jeffrey hesitated, then let it out quietly. Sorry, I just feel like I'm reliving my life. The words hung there for a second, heavy but honest. Dan didn't react with surprise or alarm, he just nodded slowly like he'd heard something familiar. I get that a lot too, Dan said gently, more than you'd think. Jeffrey looked at him, a little uncertain. Dan leaned lightly against the bunk frame, keeping his voice calm. New places, new routines, or even old memories that feel like they're repeating it can mess with your sense of what's happening now. He paused to make sure Jeffrey was following, not overwhelmed. But what's happening here, Dan added, isn't your past, it's just here today, one step at a time. Liam stayed nearby but quiet, letting Dan take the lead. Dan gestured toward the bunk. Let's just get you settled first, you don't have to sort everything out in your head right now. Jeffrey exhaled slowly, shoulders easing just a little. Okay. Dan gave a small nod. That's all we're doing just this moment. And for once, the moment felt small enough to handle. Jeffrey shifted a little in his seat, the tension from the drive still in him. I need a quick change, it was a long drive, he said. Dan nodded immediately, no hesitation or awkwardness. That's my job, we'll take care of that first. Liam stepped in smoothly. Yeah, we've got everything set up for that, then we'll get you some lunch after. Dan gestured toward the bunk area. We'll keep it quick and simple, you'll have privacy and then we'll get you settled into your room properly. Jeffrey gave a small nod, still tired but relieved to have a clear next step. Okay. Dan matched his pace, calm and matter of fact. All right, let's head that way. Liam stayed a step behind, making sure everything was ready on their end. No rushing, no pressure. Just the next step. Sam rolled over toward Jeffrey and Dan, his tone calm and welcoming. Welcome, Jeffrey, to Camp Toby, he said, and Dan, thank you for earlier. Liam stepped in lightly, trying to keep things organized. Sam, you know David doesn't like it when you're late. Sam gave a small shrug but didn't push it further. After Sam rolled away with Liam, Jeffrey watched them go for a moment, then turned to Dan, lowering his voice. After Sam and Liam left, David was the other guy following them, right? Why is he here? Dan exhaled softly, like this was a known topic but not something they usually overdiscussed with campers. Jeffrey, Dan said carefully, below Sam, Alan, John, and Liam, no one really knows everything about David. He just shows up sometimes with his husband, Scott. He paused, making sure Jeffrey was following. The counselors and campers don't really get the full background, it's just how this place runs. Some staff come and go in ways we don't always explain day to day. Dan gave a reassuring look. But for you, it doesn't change anything. Your routine, your care, your space, that stays the same. He gestured back toward the bunk area. Right now, the focus is still just you getting settled, all right. Yeah. Dan reached over calmly and activated Jeffrey's power chair controls, switching it to a controlled mode so it would guide gently and safely. Therapy time, Dan said simply. Jeffrey immediately tensed. I don't want to talk right now. Dan shook his head slightly, voice steady but not forceful. No, it's not talking, it's physical therapy, and you don't need to talk if you don't want to. He adjusted the chair settings carefully, making sure everything stayed slow and controlled. Right now, Dan continued, we're just going to help your body settle after the drive. Stretching, positioning, light movement, that's it. Jeffrey stayed quiet, still resistant but listening. Dan softened his tone a bit. You stay in control of your voice, I'll handle the setup, you just focus on what feels okay for your body. A pause. Then he gently guided the chair forward toward the therapy space, at an easy, non-rushed pace. No pressure, Dan added, just movement, that's all. Dan gently stretched Jeffrey's leg, keeping his movements slow and controlled. Jeffrey stared ahead, then spoke, a little unsure of how it would sound. Dan, this may sound weird, but when I was in the coma, I was older. My parents were different, and this place was closed. Dan paused mid-motion, glancing at him. You're joking, right? This camp just opened. Jeffrey shook his head slightly. I wish I was. The room went quiet for a second, just the soft sounds of movement and distant camp noise. Dan didn't laugh it off, but he didn't jump to conclusions either. He kept working, grounding things in the present. Comas can do a lot to your sense of time, Dan said carefully. Dreams can feel real, like full lives even. Jeffrey didn't argue, he just looked down, still caught between what he felt and what he knew didn't make sense. Dan adjusted his leg position again, steady and routine. What matters right now is this: you're here, you're safe, and this place is open. A small pause. You don't have to figure all that out today, Dan added. Jeffrey let out a quiet breath. Yeah. Dan gave a small nod, continuing the stretch. We'll take it one step at a time. Dan slowed the stretch, paying attention to Jeffrey's comfort. You told your family, he asked. Jeffrey nodded faintly, staring off. Yeah, they know, they told me they get it. He paused, jaw tightening a little, but their faces said something else. Dan didn't dismiss that. He shifted slightly so he was more in Jeffrey's line of sight. Yeah, that happens, Dan said quietly. Sometimes people say they understand because they want to support you, but they don't fully know what to do with it yet. Jeffrey's hands rested still, but you could see the frustration under the surface. Dan continued, keeping things grounded. Doesn't mean they don't care, it just means they're trying to catch up to something they haven't experienced. Jeffrey let out a small breath. Feels like I'm the only one in it. Dan nodded once. Right now, yeah, it probably does. He adjusted Jeffrey's leg again, careful and steady. But you're not alone in feeling that kind of disconnect, Dan added, and you don't have to convince anyone today. A short pause. You just focus on getting through today here, Dan said. We'll handle everything else step by step. Jeffrey didn't say much, just a small nod. And that was enough for now. Jeffrey's voice cracked out of nowhere, like the thought had been stuck inside him all along. We found Camp Toby, you're going tomorrow, he said, almost mimicking it. It's annoying to me that, his words broke and suddenly he was sobbing. I don't know who I am anymore. Dan stopped what he was doing right away. No rushing, no fixing, just present. Hey, Dan said softly, moving closer but not crowding him. That's a lot, that makes sense that it's hitting you like this. Jeffrey shook his head, trying to breathe through it, but the emotion kept coming. Dan kept his voice steady and grounded. You've been through a coma, your memories feel split, everything's changing fast, of course your sense of who you are feels shaken. He crouched slightly to stay at eye level. But not knowing right now doesn't mean you've lost who you are, Dan added. It just means you're in the middle of figuring it out. Jeffrey wiped at his face, still overwhelmed. It doesn't feel like that. I know, Dan said, it feels like everything's off, like nothing lines up. He paused, letting Jeffrey breathe. So let's not solve who you are today, Dan continued. That's too big. Right now you're Jeffrey, you're here, you made it through a lot to get here. A beat. And right now, you're someone who's allowed to feel this. Jeffrey's breathing slowly started to even out, even if the tears didn't fully stop. Dan stayed right there. We'll build the rest piece by piece, you don't have to have the answer yet. Jeffrey wiped at his face, still shaking a little. I'm sorry, I haven't stopped crying since I woke up. Dan didn't react with concern in a bad way, just calm understanding. It's okay, Dan said gently. Crying like this, it means you're trying to let everything out instead of holding it in. Jeffrey sniffed, voice unsteady. I'm always confused and overwhelmed. Dan nodded, keeping things simple. That makes sense, you went through something big, your brain trying to catch up with your body and your life. He adjusted Jeffrey's position slightly, still focused on care but fully present. So here's what we're not going to do, Dan continued. We're not going to expect you to feel clear right away. Jeffrey looked at him, listening. We're going to slow it down, Dan said. One thing at a time, right now, just this moment, you're safe, you're here, you've got people helping you. Jeffrey's breathing started to settle a little. Dan gave a small, reassuring nod. Confused and overwhelmed doesn't mean something's wrong with you, it means your mind's working through a lot. A pause. And you're not doing it alone here. Jeffrey didn't have to answer, just sitting there a little more grounded than before. Liam's voice crackled through the walkie-talkie. We good to go for his meds, PT room. Dan reached for his radio, keeping one hand steady near Jeffrey so he didn't feel rushed. Yeah, Dan replied, we're here. He looked back at Jeffrey, tone calm and predictable. All right, we're just going to pause for a second and get your meds sorted, then we'll keep going or head to lunch depending on how you're feeling. Jeffrey nodded faintly, still a little drained but more settled than before. Dan gave a small, reassuring look, same pace, nothing fast. The routine was starting to take shape, step by step just like they said. Liam stepped into the PT room, giving Jeffrey a quick but careful look. Jeffrey, you doing okay? Jeffrey shrugged slightly, I guess. Liam nodded, keeping it simple. All right, go ahead, open. Dan was already there, handing over a bottle. Here, water. Jeffrey took it, his hands a little unsteady but manageable. Liam gave a small approving nod. Good, it's hot today so both of you stay hydrated. Dan let out a quiet half-smile, already on it. Jeffrey took a sip, then another, the cool water helping more than he expected. No pressure, no rush. Just small steps, drink, breathe, settle. Sam lowered his voice, thinking Jeffrey was out of earshot. John, did Pat sign that deal yet? Because the faster we get that signed, we can kick this Jeffrey guy out. John immediately shook his head, keeping his tone firm but controlled. Tom wants his son stabilized first, he's still dealing with everything from whatever he thinks his other life is, you know this, Sam. Sam exhaled, clearly impatient but didn't push further. Across the room, Jeffrey sat with Dan and Liam, completely unaware of the conversation. He focused on the water in his hands, taking another slow sip. Dan stayed close, watching him carefully. You good? Jeffrey nodded faintly, yeah. Liam glanced over briefly, then back to Jeffrey. You're doing fine, just keep taking it one step at a time. The tension from the other side of the room never reached him. For now, he was just another camper settling in, nothing more, nothing less. Liam glanced over and gave Sam and John a quick thumbs up, then turned his attention back to the room like nothing had happened. Jeffrey shifted a little in his chair. When do we go in the pool? Dan smiled slightly, keeping things easy. Pool opens tomorrow, first day's more about settling in. He reached over and grabbed some supplies. For now, how about something low-key, coloring or finger painting, just something to relax your mind a bit. Jeffrey thought about it for a second, still a little tired but calmer than before. Okay, he said. Dan nodded, good, no pressure, just something simple. Liam added with a small grin, and tomorrow we'll see how you feel about that pool. Jeffrey gave a faint nod. Focusing now on the small, manageable thing in front of him instead of everything else all at once. Liam's voice came through steady but urgent. Dan, I got a floater buddy for Jeffrey for tonight. Sam, John, Alan, and I need to talk to you ASAP. Dan looked up from where he was organizing supplies. His tone stayed calm but focused. Copy. He glanced toward Jeffrey, making sure he was still okay and settled with the coloring materials. I'll step away for a bit, Dan said gently. You're good here, just relax and take your time. Jeffrey nodded slightly, not fully understanding the logistics but feeling the steady presence around him. Dan gave Liam a brief nod and stepped aside to handle the conversation, keeping things quiet and professional. For Jeffrey, the room stayed simple again, paper, colors, and a quiet evening settling in around him. Sam leaned in toward Dan, lowering his voice but still clearly frustrated. Dan, update. Dan didn't react sharply, he kept his tone even. He's calm, still confused but settling in. Once I set him up with something to focus on, he stopped talking about his other life. John was already typing on his phone nearby. I'm writing the email to Tom and Pat right now. Dan looked over briefly, then back to Sam. Just keep things consistent with him, no pressure, no sudden changes, he needs stability more than anything today. Sam exhaled, still tense but listening. Dan continued, firm but calm. Whatever decisions are made above us, we handle him day to day the same way, steady routine, clear structure. John nodded once without looking up from his phone. In the background, Jeffrey stayed with his coloring, focused on something simple and grounding, not aware of the conversation happening nearby. Dan glanced back toward him for a second, then lowered his voice again. He's doing better when things are predictable, let's keep it that way. Dan stopped what he was doing and looked directly at Sam, his tone steady but noticeably firmer than before. That's not how this works, Dan said. Sam crossed his arms. If you don't like how I run my camp, then there's the door. A new buddy will replace you, got it? For a moment the room went quiet. Dan didn't raise his voice, but he didn't back down either. This isn't about control or replacing people, it's about a camper who needs consistent care and stability. He gestured briefly toward where Jeffrey was sitting in the background, still focused on his coloring. He's not a contract or a situation to manage around paperwork, Dan continued. He's a person, and we follow his care plan based on his needs, not negotiations. Liam nearby stayed quiet but attentive, watching the exchange closely. Sam's posture stayed rigid, but Dan's tone remained calm and grounded. I'll do my job, Dan added, but I'm not changing how I handle a vulnerable camper based on threats. The tension lingered, but the focus stayed where it belonged, on Jeffrey's care, not the argument. Sam's voice cut through the room, sharp and final. Dan, you're fired. Liam, you will be Jeffrey's new buddy. Dan, pack and leave, no goodbyes, just go. Liam will explain why you left to Jeffrey. For a moment the air went still. Dan didn't react emotionally. He just stood there for a second, looking between Sam and Liam, then toward Jeffrey in the background, still coloring, still unaware of the shift happening around him. Dan spoke calmly. If that's your decision, I'm going to need proper handover protocol for his care, especially with his meds and his neurological history. Sam waved it off, handled. Dan didn't argue further, but his tone stayed firm. Then I'll document everything I've done and make sure Liam has what he needs for continuity. Liam shifted slightly, clearly uncomfortable, but nodded once. I've got it. Dan finally looked toward Jeffrey again, just briefly. No dramatic goodbye, just a quiet check-in from a distance. Then he gathered his things in an organized, steady way. No rush, no anger, just controlled professionalism. Liam stepped closer to Jeffrey, preparing to take over the interaction smoothly so nothing felt sudden to him. And the room kept moving forward, even as one role quietly ended and another took its place. Jeffrey set the coloring down and shifted in his chair. His voice was quiet, tired. I want to go to bed. Liam nodded right away, stepping in calmly. I've got you. Dan had some real stuff to take care of, so I'm taking over while you're here. Jeffrey frowned slightly, trying to process the change. Okay, why do I need to know? Liam kept his tone simple and steady. Protocol. He didn't over-explain or make it heavier than it needed to be. It just means there's a staff transition, Liam added. Same place, same routine, just me for tonight. Nothing changes for you, just who's here to help you through it. Jeffrey looked at him for a second, still tired, still overwhelmed, but not pushing back anymore. Okay, he said again, softer this time. Liam gave a small nod. All right, let's get you to bed then, one step at a time. And he guided the process gently, keeping everything calm, predictable, and focused on getting Jeffrey settled for the night. Dan stepped away from the bunk area and made a call, his voice controlled but clearly tense. Hey Tom, right? Tom's voice came through. Yeah, Dan. Dan exhaled. Tell Pat not to sign the contract. There was a beat of silence on the line. Tom replied, confused. She did, but why do you care? You should be putting my son to bed. Dan didn't dodge it. Sam fired me for standing up to him. Tom's tone shifted immediately, more alert. What fired you, for what exactly? Dan kept it simple and factual. For refusing to treat Jeffrey like a bargaining piece. He's trying to override care decisions and remove staff who don't comply. Another pause. Tom responded more firmly now. Where is Jeffrey right now? Dan glanced back toward the bunk area before answering. He's being settled in for the night. Liam is with him. He's safe. Tom stayed quiet for a moment, then said, stay where you are. Don't escalate anything further. I'm coming into this. Dan nodded even though Tom couldn't see it. Understood. He lowered the phone slightly, still watching the situation carefully from a distance, making sure Jeffrey's night stayed calm and uninterrupted. Tom called Sam directly, his voice tight with frustration. "I get one call for this camp," Tom said. "Like Dan, did I make myself clear? I will get my mom to end this if you and your people don't do your part. We don't need Dan messing things up for both sides." There was a brief pause on the other end. Sam replied, more measured than before, "Tom, I hear you." Tom didn't let up. "Then fix it. My son is there to stabilize, not get caught in staff power struggles. I want consistency. No more firing people mid-process, no more chaos around him." Sam exhaled, understood, "We'll keep operations steady." Tom's voice lowered slightly, still firm. "Good, because I'm watching this closely. If it destabilizes him, I shut it down." Another pause. Sam answered, "It won't reach him. We'll keep it contained." Tom ended the call shortly after, still clearly unsettled but focused on keeping the situation controlled. Back at the camp, the priority remained unchanged: Jeffrey's night, his routine, and keeping things calm and stable around him. Sam's tone turned sharp, pushing things too far. "Tom, I'll just tell him you made them lie, say you helped me cover it up, or tell him he was never in a coma." Tom didn't hesitate. "Then you're destroying your own leverage." Sam shrugged it off over the phone. "Your call." Then he added, blunt and transactional, "Go ahead, call your mom. Tell her you need $40,000 for camp fees. I'll take care of the rest." There was a long pause. When Tom spoke again, his voice was colder now, less emotional, more deliberate. "You're crossing a line, Sam." Sam didn't respond right away. Tom continued, "My son's care is not a bargaining chip. Not for money, not for control, not for whatever you think you're doing here." Another silence. "You keep him stable," Tom said very clearly. "That's the only agreement that matters right now." Sam gave a short, noncommittal response, "We'll see." The call ended with tension hanging heavy, no resolution, just a line drawn. And back at the camp, none of it reached Jeffrey, who was simply trying to get through his first night. Tom paced a little, phone still in his hand, frustration written all over him. "I hate Vin," he said under his breath. Dea didn't react right away, just watched him, reading the situation. "He wants more," she said quietly. Tom nodded, jaw tight. "Yeah, and he's using Jeffrey as bait to get it." That landed heavy. Dea stepped closer, keeping her voice calm but firm. "Then we don't play into that, we focus on Jeffrey, what he actually needs, not what Sam is trying to push." Tom ran a hand through his hair. "I know, this isn't what I signed him up for." "No," Dea agreed, "but we can still control what happens next." Tom looked at her, grounding a bit. "We make sure Jeffrey stays safe," she continued. "We stay involved, and we don't let Sam dictate everything." Tom exhaled slowly. "Yeah." For a moment, the anger settled into something more focused. Because at the center of all of it was still Jeffrey. Liam kept his voice low and steady as he helped Jeffrey settle under the covers. "The kid's down," he said. Across the room, Sam didn't even look over. "Good, just a few more days. Samuel Vincent Walker always gets his way." Billy let out a short, uneasy laugh. "Yeah, just like your mom, Vin." There was a brief silence after that, one of those moments where a joke doesn't quite land right. Sam's expression tightened for a second, but he didn't snap back. "Stay focused," he said instead. "We're close." Meanwhile, none of that tension reached Jeffrey. In the bunk, the lights were dim, the noise faded, and for the first time that day, everything slowed down. No decisions, no pressure. Just rest. Max stepped closer, lowering his voice but not backing down. "Vin, we faked your death for you," he said. "And now you're doing the same thing Ben did to you, you're doing it to this kid." Vin's grip tightened on his power chair controls, jaw clenching. "Max, shut up and get back to work," he snapped. "Tom owes me for what Ben did to me." The room went tense. Max didn't move right away. "That doesn't make this right," he said quietly. Vin turned slightly in his chair, anger and something deeper underneath it flickering across his face. "You don't get it, none of you do." There was a pause, heavy, uncomfortable. Max finally stepped back, but not in agreement, just backing off for now. Across the camp, things stayed quiet on the surface. But underneath, the cracks were getting bigger. Vin's voice came out cold, controlled but sharp. If you weren't family, I would have fired you too, like I did to Dan earlier for back talk. Max stared at him, not hiding the disappointment now. What happened to you? Where's the Vin we met? That hit something, but instead of softening, Vin hardened. That Vin, he said, that Vin was being controlled by a crazy person. He shook his head. Come ask me that after something like that happens to you. Until then, I don't need your opinions. Silence followed. Max didn't argue this time, but he didn't agree either. He just looked at Vin for a second longer, like he was trying to recognize the person in front of him and couldn't quite. Then he stepped back. The divide between them was clear now, not just disagreement but something deeper. And while all of this was unfolding behind the scenes, Jeffrey slept, unaware of how complicated the place around him really was. Vin's tone stayed firm, almost final. Max, business always comes first, keep your emotions out of it. Max didn't answer right away, his expression tightened but he held his ground. That's not how people work, Max said quietly, not real people. Vin turned slightly in his power chair, voice colder now. It is how this works here, if you can't handle that you shouldn't be involved. A pause settled between them. Max exhaled, frustrated but controlled. You're not hearing yourself right now. Vin didn't respond to that, he simply looked away, signaling the conversation was over in his mind. Max stayed a moment longer, then stepped back, shaking his head slightly before leaving the space. The tension didn't explode, but it didn't disappear either. It just stayed there, unresolved, hanging over everything like a weight. John approached carefully, watching Vin's posture in the chair. Vin. Vin didn't look up right away. Open house in a few days, I need to set up. John frowned slightly. Set up what exactly? Vin finally turned his chair a bit toward him. Everything, the structure, the flow, who's where. If this place is going to run right, it needs to be ready before people start showing up. John held his ground but kept his tone steady. That sounds like a lot for right now. Vin's jaw tightened. It has to be done. A brief pause settled between them. John softened slightly. You're not the only one responsible for making this work, Vin. Vin didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed fixed ahead like he was already planning 10 steps past the conversation. I know, he said finally, but I'm the one making sure it doesn't fall apart. John didn't push further, he just nodded once slowly. Just don't burn yourself out doing it. Vin didn't respond to that, already moving on in his mind to what needed to be built next. Vin's voice stayed matter of fact, like he was closing a deal. Tom will send us that money, he said, then Jeffrey won't be a problem anymore. John's expression tightened immediately. Vin, don't talk about him like that. Vin didn't flinch. It's not personal, it's logistics. Once funding is secured, things stabilize. That includes removing variables. John stepped closer, voice lower but firm. Jeffrey is not a variable, he's a kid. Vin finally looked at him directly. And right now, he's unstable to the system we're trying to run. A beat of silence. John shook his head slightly. You're getting too far into this. Vin didn't answer the way John wanted. Instead, he turned his chair slightly away again, already focused on his next steps. This gets handled, Vin said simply, one way or another. John didn't respond right away, just stood there, clearly uneasy with where things were heading. Vin's voice dropped a little, less sharp this time, more strained underneath the control. I can't fail at this again, John, he said. Jeffrey stays until the open house. He may say anything he wants, but these doors can't close again. I can't let that happen again. John watched him carefully, the tension still there but shifting. Vin, John said more gently, you're tying too much of this to what happened before. This isn't the same situation. Vin shook his head slightly. It always starts the same. A pause. John stepped a bit closer, keeping his tone grounded. Then we do it differently this time, not by forcing outcomes, not by making Jeffrey part of something he doesn't understand. Vin didn't answer immediately. His grip on the chair controls loosened just a fraction. John continued, firm but calm. You don't prevent failure by controlling everything, you prevent it by doing it right. Silence hung there for a moment. Vin looked away, not fully agreeing, but not pushing back either. For the first time in a while, the conversation wasn't escalating. Vin's voice dropped, the controls slipping for a moment. I'm scared, okay, he admitted. I don't want another Ben moment. John's expression softened slightly. I don't get it. Vin exhaled, struggling to put it into words. We lost money. Liam couldn't take care of me and eat at the same time. Liam put me in a group home where I met Ben, you know the rest. The weight behind it sat heavy in the air. John shook his head a little, stepping closer. Bro, you're not alone anymore. You've got Dad, Max, sometimes Link, you've got family now. Vin didn't respond right away. His grip on the chair tightened, but his voice came out quieter. That's what I'm trying to hold on to, he said, but it still feels like it could all fall apart again. John stayed calm, steady. Then we don't repeat what happened before, we slow it down, we do it right this time. A pause. Vin didn't argue, he just looked forward, breathing a little slower now, still carrying fear but no longer alone in it. Vin's voice softened, the edge finally dropping. Sorry, it's a lot, he admitted. I kept this to myself because I didn't want that to happen again. John didn't interrupt, he just listened. Vin continued more quietly now. I thought if I handled everything, controlled it, planned it right, then it wouldn't fall apart like before. A long pause settled in. John spoke gently, you didn't have to carry it alone. Vin swallowed, still looking forward. It didn't feel like I had a choice. John shook his head slightly. There's always a point where you can let people in, you're at that point now. Vin didn't respond right away, his grip on the chair loosened a little. John added, steady and simple, you don't fix what happened in the past by isolating yourself in the present. Silence again, but lighter than before. Vin finally nodded once, small and tired, not resolved yet, but no longer holding it all alone in the same way. The next day the transfer went through. Sam looked at the confirmation, then picked up the phone. Thanks for doing business with us. Tom didn't hold back. Vin, you're evil. Sam didn't react emotionally, his tone stayed polished, almost rehearsed. Camp Toby is grateful for this generous donation, Jeffrey is in great hands. Tom's anger cut through, asshole. There was a brief silence. Then the line went dead. On one end, Tom stood there, phone still in his hand, knowing he just made a move to protect his son but not trusting the people now in control. On the other, Sam lowered the phone slowly, the calm expression returning like nothing had happened. And in the middle of it all, Jeffrey woke up to a new day at camp, unaware of the deal that had just been made around him. Max, Billy, and John stood in the office as Vin rolled in, a tight, controlled energy around him. We got the money, Vin said. Max didn't react to that first. What about Jeffrey? Vin answered without hesitation. If Link keeps pretending to be Liam like before, we won't have an issue. The grandmother's taking him home after the open house anyway. That landed hard. John's head snapped slightly. Pretending to be Liam, Vin, what are you doing? Billy shifted uncomfortably, clearly not liking where this was going. Max stepped forward, more direct now. You're crossing lines again. Vin's expression hardened. I'm keeping this place running. Max shook his head. No, you're repeating the same patterns you said messed you up. A pause. John added, quieter but firm, you just told me you were scared of becoming that again. Vin didn't respond right away. The room held that tension, money secured, plan in motion, but the cost of it getting harder to ignore. Vin snapped back, defensive now. Jeffrey knows Link as Liam, what am I supposed to do? Link told him he was Liam. If you're mad, be mad at him, I've got enough on my plate already. Max didn't let that slide. That's not the point, Vin, you're still choosing to go along with it. John added, calmer but firm, and you know why that's a problem. It's not just about who started it, it's about what you do once you know. Billy stayed quiet, watching the tension build. Vin rubbed his face, clearly overwhelmed. I don't have time to fix every piece of this right now, I'm trying to keep everything from falling apart. Max stepped closer, and lying to a kid who's already confused is how you think that happens. That hit harder than the others. Vin didn't answer immediately, he just looked away, jaw tight. John spoke again, softer this time. You said you were scared of repeating the past, this is how it starts. Silence filled the room again, only this time it wasn't just tension. It was doubt creeping in. Vin's voice came out sharp, but there was fear underneath it. His family told me if we tell him the truth and he finds out something else was a lie, he could go into a seizure. If that happens, we get sued. So yeah, they're basically blackmailing me. If you guys want to go to court over a name, be my guest. Max didn't bite on the legal angle. That's not what this is about, Vin. John nodded, keeping his tone grounded. You're framing it like it's either lie to him or hurt him. It's not that simple. Vin shook his head. It is that simple when we're the ones responsible if something happens. Billy finally spoke up, cautious. Then we handle it the right way: medical guidance, documented plan, slow transition, whatever it takes, not just pretending. Max added, you don't protect someone fragile by building more confusion around them. Vin looked between them, clearly overwhelmed. I'm trying to keep him stable and keep this place from collapsing. John stepped closer. Then separate those two things. Jeffrey's care shouldn't be tied to business pressure. A pause. And if there's a real seizure risk, John continued, then that needs to be handled by doctors and a clear care plan, not fear and guessing. Vin didn't respond right away. His shoulders dropped slightly. For the first time, it wasn't just defense, it was uncertainty about whether he'd chosen the right way to handle it. The car door slammed harder than it needed to. Tom and Pat moved fast toward the entrance. Where's my kid? Tom demanded the second he saw staff. Pat was right behind him, eyes scanning everything, already tense. We want to see Jeffrey now. The energy at the front shifted immediately. No more quiet control, no more behind-the-scenes planning. Liam stepped forward first, keeping his tone calm. He's okay, he's in his bunk resting. Tom didn't slow down. Take me to him. Pat added, firm and direct, we're not waiting. There was no arguing with that. Liam nodded, all right, this way. As they started moving, the pressure that had been building behind closed doors was now right out in the open. No more distance. No more control from the shadows. They were here for Jeffrey. Liam grabbed the walkie, voice low but urgent. Sam, we've got an issue at B3. A beat of static. Vin came through. What? Liam glanced toward the path where Tom and Pat were heading in fast. Tom and Pat are here. Silence just for a second. Then Vin's tone shifted tighter. Already, all right, keep them calm, I'm coming. Liam lowered the radio, tension creeping in but trying to stay composed. Everything that had been building behind the scenes was about to collide head-on. Sam grabbed the radio, voice tight and controlled. Link Liam where Jeffrey. Liam answered right away, with PT. A short pause, then Sam again, more forceful. Until I talk with them, Jeffrey does not leave that room. Liam hesitated for just a fraction of a second, then copy. The walkie crackled as the PT room confirmed too, copy. For a moment, everything locked into place, orders given, positions held. But outside that room, footsteps were getting closer. Tom and Pat weren't the kind of people who stopped at instructions. Jeffrey looked up, confused by the sudden tension in the room. What's going on? I hear my dad and grandma. The PT staff kept their tone light, trying not to alarm him. Just donors visiting today, they said. You might just be feeling a little homesick. Jeffrey frowned slightly. No, that sounded like them. He shifted in his chair, more alert now, heart starting to pick up. The staff stayed calm. Let's just stay focused here, okay? You're doing good. But Jeffrey wasn't fully convinced. Something didn't feel right. Sam rolled forward in his wheelchair, trying to block the path. Tom, Pat, you can't do this. Tom didn't slow down, his voice was sharp and direct. You got the money, give me my kid. Pat stood slightly to the side, watching everything carefully, her expression tense but controlled. We're not here to argue. Sam's hands tightened on the wheels. This isn't how it works here. Tom stepped closer, unwavering. It is today, where is Jeffrey? For a moment everything stalled, staff watching, tension thick in the air. Then from down the hall, the door to PT was still closed. Jeffrey was just on the other side, unaware of how close everything had become. Sam tried to hold his position, voice raised but controlled, so you can just keep lying to him. Tom snapped back immediately. Ask that when your kid is in a coma for a fucking year. Pat stepped in, voice shaking but firm. My grandson was in his head, he saw other people as his family. Tom pointed, anger finally breaking through the restraint. Dea wanted him with your care team, but you turned my son into a pawn because you had a bad relationship with Ben, my brother, and now you're using a 24-year-old with memory loss so you can get revenge." The room went silent for a beat. Sam's jaw tightened, but for once he didn't have a quick reply. Pat looked between them, softer but exhausted. "This isn't about winning." Tom didn't lower his voice, but it steadied. "It's about my son, that's it." Behind the closed PT door, Jeffrey was still inside, unaware of how close everything was to spilling into him all at once. Sam's voice cut through the hallway again, sharper now. "Why keep lying to him?" Tom didn't hesitate. "I don't want to lose another year with him." For a second, everything held still. Then Sam shouted, "Open the door." The PT hesitated, looked between everyone, then slowly opened it. The door swung inward. Inside, Jeffrey sat in his chair, suddenly looking up, confused, alert, and overwhelmed as the noise and tension flooded into the room all at once. Tom's expression changed immediately the moment he saw him. "Jeffrey," he said, voice dropping. Pat stepped forward too, softer now. "Hey, sweetheart." The energy in the hallway shifted completely. No more arguing, no more control games. Just a father and grandmother seeing him again. Sam stepped in quickly, trying to regain control. "Tom, Jeffrey cannot come back because of this." "Pat, same thing applies with the group home." Pat turned sharply toward him. "That is not your decision to make." Sam's voice hardened. "My camp, my rules." The room went still for a beat. Jeffrey looked between them, overwhelmed by the tension and voices, then quietly to Liam, "Thanks, Mr. Sam, thanks." He shifted his gaze to Tom and Pat, uncertainty in his voice. "Dad, Grandma, can I go home now?" Yeah. Tom didn't hesitate this time. His expression softened immediately. "Yeah," he said, stepping closer. "Yeah, kid, let's go." Pat moved right beside him, protective and relieved. "We're taking you home." Liam stepped back slightly, letting space open up around Jeffrey. The room felt like it finally exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Tom guided Jeffrey gently. "You're done here." And this time there was no argument stopping it. Dea held the phone tighter as Tom spoke, his voice still carrying the leftover tension from everything that had just happened. "He got kicked out," Tom said. "Both deals are off the table, we're coming home." Dea exhaled slowly, absorbing it. "Okay," she said, steadying her tone. "Is Jeffrey with you right now?" "Yeah," Tom answered. "He's with me and Pat, we're getting him out of there." A pause. Dea nodded even though he couldn't see it. "Good, just focus on getting him home safely, no more conversations with them." Tom agreed immediately. "That's the plan." Dea softened slightly. "When you get back, we'll help him settle, no pressure, no more chaos tonight." Tom's voice dropped a bit. "He's exhausted, so are we." "I know," Dea said quietly, "just bring him home." The call ended shortly after. And for the first time that day, things weren't moving toward more conflict, just away from it.